So nostalgia plays a important role in timeless lifestyle photography. It's a sentimental longing for the past. So things like kids just having fun outside, playing with the sprinkler, tire swing, chalk. I see a lot of that in my work. I really like to combine these two photography genres. With fine art photography, the artist has a very specific and intentional vision. There is something they often want conveyed within their work. Lifestyle photography is about capturing the everyday in an artistic manner. It's a lot about, finding good light, of course, but it's also about simplifying your frame, removing things that don't necessarily need to be there, that aren't enhancing your story, shooting with intention and being purposeful, and of course, the importance of storytelling. This shot was taken with the Sigma Art 105 millimeter. It's a fairly new lens. It was released last year, and the aperture on it is wide open at 1.4. It's my absolute favorite lens to use along with the Sigma Art 85. And a lot of times you'll see people use this type of lens with portraiture, and I like to use it with lifestyle in my everyday. It's a beast of a lens. It's a big lens, but the compression that I get from it in the bokeh is absolutely amazing. So it's helping to separate my son from the background here, making him stand out and pop. And as you can see, I placed the sun at the very edge of my frame to draw more attention to him and what he's doing here, walking through the field with his bug catcher. Another shot with the 105, and this is at 1.8. Again, you could see the compression I'm getting here in this shot. And I love to use longer focal lengths when I'm shooting in the rain or I'm shooting in the snow because of the compression. It's making that pop. It's making that rain pop, making that snow appear larger than it really is. I kind of lose that detail when I'm shooting with a wide angle. So that's why I often gravitate towards longer focal length lenses here. One of the things that's so important within my work and within timeless lifestyle children's photography is anticipating the moment. Here we're at a park and my son is walking around the pond and I knew he was going to walk into the frame. So I sat there and I waited patiently for him to enter my frame, and then I took a series of shots. This ended up being my favorite just because of his posture and the way he was walking. But there's a lot of intentional things here too. What he's wearing, his yellow pants against the green, making him pop, that little pop of color. All of it was intentional. Again, the 105. We're at a park. They have little red balloons. I was photographing my son here. He was picking berries and eating them, and then the other two ran into my frame. And I loved the sense of mystery in this shot because you could tell here just by looking at it, without knowing my story, that there was probably two other people here in the woods just by the repetition of the balloons and the red. But this 105 lens really gave this image a dreamy feel, made my subjects pop and stand out. So this shot was taken with 135. But one of the reasons I shoot with this lens is so that I have time to roll out of my frame when they're coming right at me. And I shot this pretty wide open. It's at 2.2, and they're moving fast towards me, and they're both in focus with this lens. My shutter speed here was 1/1250. So for me, it's a lot about, too, just keeping it simple. A strong image can often be minimalistic, yet still powerful. It doesn't have to be complicated. As you can see here, there's a lot of negative space, and that was intentional. There was an amazing moody sky, and I really wanted to capture a lot of that. And there's also a little bit of color theory going on here, too. I've got the blue tones and the orange tones. So complementary colors are a really big thing I like to have in my work. Reds and greens together, purples and yellows, all of that. So this is the Sigma Art 24, and almost all of my above angle shots are with this lens. They work great in tight spaces, especially the 24. So with faceless images, they can be some of the most powerful images because they're relatable and they're ambiguous. I like to just kind of follow my subjects around and photograph them and let them kind of be. So with this one here, as you can see, lots of negative space here, which gives this image a sense of scale. So here, 105 again, you could see the dreamy feel that this lens gives. And I think that's one of the things I really love about it. When I first started shooting with this lens, I had people mention, like, I feel like your images have gotten a little bit more magical, dreamy lately, and it's this lens. It's all about, for me, capturing that everyday, the mundane moments that are really beautiful and make up most of our life and are relatable, of course. I've got the bird's eye view, and with that view, then we could see her face. We could see that she's sleeping. We wouldn't really be able to see that as much if I would have shot it straight on. So that was intentional. 105 again, and in more of a detailed shot here. The sun is setting, and I really loved how the light was falling here. Nice directional light, which is hard to do outside as much. Inside, I can manipulate the light easily, but outside, I really can only get this type of light often when I'm shooting either early morning or late in the evening. I know I mentioned that I absolutely love the 105, but I have to say my go-to lens for the past, 3-4 years has always been the 85. It's just a great everyday lens. You don't have to back up really far when you're photographing your subjects outside. One of the other things I really love about the Sigma lenses is just the color. I'm always shooting in color. It's not that I have anything against black and white images. I love black and white, but I always gravitate towards color. So lens choice does play a big role in storytelling and lifestyle photography. As I mentioned, wide angle is what I'm going to be using inside. Typically 24 or 35. Outside, typically it's going to be the 85, 105, or 135 for me. I like to shoot with all prime lenses, so I like that I can shoot, wide open at 1.4, 1.6. I like to do that. Also, I'm often working in low light, so because of that reason, I need that aperture. So this is one of my favorite shots with the 105, all in camera, and this is wide open at 1.4. So I focused on his hands, and you could see how sharp his hands are. And shutter speed was about 1/500, not incredibly fast. The sun was starting to really set here in this shot. So this one, longer focal length, again, 135. This was so crucial for this shot, to have a longer focal length because of the spider web. If I would have shot this image with like a 24 millimeter, that spider web would have been lost. We wouldn't have really seen the spider web. And so the 135, I'm getting that nice compression behind it, which is making it pop. So now you can see what they're looking at. You can see what's happening here within my frame. I wanted to mention and talk about interesting compositions. That has a lot to do, of course, with lifestyle photography and changing it up, not just shooting straight on. And again, this goes back to Sigma Art 24 millimeter and shooting from above, one of my favorite perspectives to shoot. First of all, of course, I want to show how small she is, better sense of scale. And then the crib lines, they're so important here. I love how they're framing her, they're leading to her. It just is more visually interesting. So I'm trying to pull up as high as I can go, and almost all my above shots are going to be with the 24 millimeter. This obviously has a greater depth of field than shooting with longer focal lengths, but I'm getting the landscape, all of these details, so important. And then my boys here standing in the middle. But I'm able to capture all of that rainbow. I would not have been able to do that with an 85 or a 105. So use of color has the ability to enhance storytelling, and it can help guide the viewer through your frame. Color here was definitely strategic. There's a little bit of red, white, and blue going on here, and that was intentional. So there's all those like little elements to take into consideration when you're shooting, whether it's your family or your clients, and giving them suggestions. So in regards to timeless clothing, too, if you ever are interested in doing stock photography, this is also important, because if you're interested in doing stock photography and selling your prints, you really need to avoid labels. You can't have like labels and like Mickey Mouse or anything like that on the children's clothing. You won't be able to sell that. So here's an example of simple clothing. It's bringing attention, and you're not focusing so much on what he's wearing. You're focusing on him. What's he looking at? I shot this vertical for a reason, for a better sense of scale here, making him look small. And so I shot this with the 105, which made these leaves that are falling pop. It made them stand out. Again, if I would have shot this with a 24 or the 35 millimeter, these leaves would have probably been lost. It wouldn't have been as easy to see them here in the background and see what he's looking at. This is why I like to shoot with this type of lens when it's raining or it's snowing, because of the bokeh that I'm getting. It makes that snow pop, but we're focusing on the connection and the moment. Back to the basics here. This is a shot with the 105 millimeter, and this is at 1.6, getting some really nice compression here in the background, and there is backlight here. So we've got some golden hour haze. Make sure you're not getting too much haze so that your subject is murky. And so this was strategic in where I place the sun too. I often like to have that haze directly, above my subject's head. So I placed that there, and then it backlit the water and made the water really pop and stand out here. Nice fast shutter speed, which is really kind of defining the water. You could see the droplets and all of that. So it was really important setting choice here as well. So I want to thank you guys for attending and appreciate it.